Good morning. At the outset, I'm extremely grateful to Providence Endocrine and Diabetes Specialty Center, Trivandrum, for inviting me to deliver this discussion on a very hot topic, that's management of thyroid disorders during a pandemic, marrying evidence to common sense. A 27-year-old female is Mrs. V, who is a non-hypothyroid for the past 8 years, who also had a normal TFT in the last visit, and who is also compliant with treatment, is not able to do her annual checkup in the April due to lockdown. So what is the advice that you will give to that patient if she calls you? Another Miss M, who is 23 years now, first started on treatment for Graves' disease in March 2019. She frantically calls you saying that she has high-grade fever, breathlessness, and sore throat. She is afraid that she has COVID infection. What will you do? A marriage. What is a marriage? The topic given to me is actually marrying evidence to common sense. So, what is marriage? Marriage is the legally or formally recognized union of two people as partners in a personal relationship, and there should be mutual love and respect. If not, it may end in divorce. Likewise, we should be careful while marrying evidence to common sense. Otherwise, there can be mismanagement of the clinical conditions. Why is the topic relevant? Because thyroid disorders are highly prevalent in the community. As per NAINS 3 survey, hypothyroidism is there in 4% people, hyperthyroidism around 1.3, antibody positivity is too high, around 12% are having antibody positivity, and thyroid nodule prevalence as per the ATA guidelines is around 19 to 68%. So many people in the community may be having thyroid nodules as well. And again, we know that prevalence of COVID-19 infection is increasing daily. More than 1 lakh, 1.25 lakhs people are affected in India alone. And also there are logistic issues due to lockdown, and also problems, the fear of patients for coming to hospital and other logistical issues which happens either due to the pandemic or due to the lockdown. And another relevance is that COVID-19 infection and the drugs used can occasionally alter the natural history of thyroid diseases. Vice versa also is true. And what is the relation between viruses and thyroid? It is said that viruses has got a role in the pathogenesis of autoimmune thyroiditis as well as subacute thyroiditis. So many viruses like HIV, HTLV1, congenital rubella, HCV, HBV, enterovirus infection, as well as MMR vaccination have been linked to the onset of Hashimoto's thyroiditis, precipitation of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Again, HTLV1, HIV, HFV, parvovirus, enterovirus, human herpes virus have been linked with the precipitation of Graves' disease also. And one interesting autopsy study in SARS infection, it was seen that there is involvement of thyroid also in the previous SARS infection. We know that the virus that is linked to COVID-19 is SARS-CoV-2. Previously, we had a SARS infection which was due to SARS-CoV-1. So autopsy studies in the SARS-CoV-1 infection showed that there is consistent destruction of the follicular epithelium, distortion of architecture, and exfoliation of epithelial cells into the follicle in the thyroid. And also we know that there are changes in TFT due to viral infections. The most important one may be the sick thyroid syndrome in patients who are severely ill, hospitalized, maybe in ventilator. In those kind of patients, there can be adaptive changes in the thyroid function tests, which is known as sick thyroid syndrome. The commonest being low T3 syndrome, and there can be varying permutation combination of the different TFTs. There can be low T3 plus low T4. Again, there can be low TSH as well. And the recurrent phase, there can be mild elevation of TSH as well. There can be different kind of combination of TFT abnormalities in very sick patients, and altogether they are known as sick thyroid syndrome or non-thyroidal illness. And in the SARS-CoV-1 infection, it was seen that there is transient thyrotoxicosis, central and as well as primary hypothyroidism in patients affected. And central hypothyroidism was one of the very characteristic features of SARS-1 infection. It is supposed to be due to the lymphocytic hypophysitis, the pituitary inflammation that is happening secondary to the viral infection. And again, Epstein-Barr virus infection is supposed to produce a high titer of heterophile antibodies, which can interfere with thyroid function interpretation. There can be discordant TFT if there is EBV infection. Whether it happens with the SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, we don't know. And there can be changes in TFT to the drugs which are used for the treatment of viral infections, especially COVID-19. drugs like lopinavir and ritonavir, there is enough evidence which says that there is increasing requirement of thyroxine. They can precipitate hypothyroidism. And again, steroids, vasopressors used in the ICU setting for sick patients can suppress the TSH. Interferon can lead to various thyroid function abnormalities leading like hypothyroidism or even hyperthyroidism. Amiodarone, which is supposed to have some antiviral action, which is being tried for management of SARS-CoV-2 infection, can also lead to various kind of thyroid dysfunction like amiodarone-induced thyrotoxicosis or amiodarone-induced hypothyroidism. And what will you do for the first patient who called us, that lady who is well controlled previously on thyroxine? So there is evidence to say that even less frequent monitoring may be sufficient. Even there is one study which says that even if we monitor once in 18 months, that should be fairly sufficient, provided the patient is strictly compliant with treatment. And one of the options that has come up is they can opt for teleconsultation. The patients will get reassured by if they directly speak to the concerned consultant, and we can always reassure the patient through teleconsultation, especially during the time of a pandemic or due to the time of lockdown. This is a very helpful modality of to communicate with the patients. And definitely we should, in hypothyroid patients, should undergo more frequent monitoring if the dose was changed in the last visit. And ideally, brand consistency is recommended for patients with hypothyroidism on thyroxine, but changing for a few days may be fine. That may not be produce any significant harm, but we should always keep in our mind that they may not be bioequivalent as is suggested by some studies. And when we come to the second patient who was frantic about her fever and sore throat, we know patients who are being started on carbimazole for Graves' disease, they can develop agranulocytosis, and this agranulocytosis symptoms may mimic COVID symptoms like fever, sore throat, myalgia, and those kind of symptoms. And always we should be very careful when a patient with hyperthyroidism is being started on carbimazole or PTU. The thing is, we should educate the patients. This is applicable not only to the COVID times. Any point of time, if you treat a patient with Graves' disease with the antithyroid drugs, you should educate the patient about the symptoms of agranulocytosis, and they should immediately stop if they develop fever or sore throat, and they should go for checking CBC. If the CBC facility is not available, what they should do is they should completely stop treatment until the symptoms subside, and it's better that they contact the concerned physician through telecommunication. And differentiation between Graves and thyroiditis may be difficult during COVID times because of the restricted access to tactician thyroid scan or nuclear scans, and also TSH receptor antibody estimation. So probably you may resort to a clinical clinical differentiation between Graves' disease as well as thyroiditis. And there is an article which says that there is around 90% sensitivity and around 70% specificity if we use clinical criteria like ophthalmopathy or dermal changes or presence of goiter or presence of significant symptoms into consideration. There's a scoring system which can distinguish between Graves' disease and thyroiditis. Probably we may have to resort to clinical grounds to distinguish between these two entities. And probably we may be having some patients who might have completed 2 years of treatment with antithyroid drugs, and we were planning to do antithyroid radioactive iodine therapy or surgery for those kind of patients, but due to the pandemic and due to the restrictions associated with the pandemic, we are not able to do this definitive procedure. Then what will you do? So there is enough data again coming up saying that long-term antithyroid drugs may be considered in these kind of patients. There is a meta-analysis by Assisi et al. In Thyroid 2017, which says that they are as effective as sending the patient for a definitive kind of therapy. So you may probably continue the antithyroid drugs even for a longer period, even up to 3 years, and even data is there for treatment up to 5 years. And another option is teleconsultation can be done in patients with Graves' hyperthyroidism once in 3 months with thyroid function test, because being a chronic disease, these diseases are amenable to teleconsultations. And again, infections can lead to thyroid storm, especially in drug non-compliant patients, and it has been described in H1N1 disease pandemic in the past. And another point is the clinical features of thyroid storm and severe COVID infection may overlap. And the clinical suspicion is the key always. We should have a clinical suspicion to distinguish between these two conditions. And patients with toxic adenoma or toxic multinodular goiter, during the time of pandemic, what we can do is we can manage them with medical therapy alone, and surgery or definitive therapy like surgery or radioactive ion therapy can take place while the COVID or pandemic situation improves. Another side-threatening severe complication of Graves' disease is Graves' ophthalmopathy. It can lead to loss of vision if it is severe. And traditionally in active or severe case of Graves' ophthalmopathy, drug that has been used is IV glucocorticoid, like IV methylprednisolone pulse therapy is supposed to be one of the best options for Graves' ophthalmopathy. But always we should be careful in our minds while giving this kind of treatment, because this can lead to immunosuppression. There is chance of risk of infection. The patient may require hospitalization. So to circumvent that, what we can do is we can try with oral steroids if the disease is not severe or very active. And if it is not, if the patient is not responding, definitely we should think of switching over to IV methylprednisolone pulse therapy. One of the better drugs during a pandemic time may be teprotumumab, which is a IGF-1 receptor blocker, which is supposed to have very good effect in the Graves' ophthalmopathy, especially in the reduction of proptosis. But this drug is not available in India as of now. And the other drugs for Graves' ophthalmopathy include rituximab and mycophenolate mofetil. And there is a study, especially in rheumatoid arthritis, in which it was seen that the risk of infection is not too high if you use rituximab for rheumatoid arthritis. So in that aspect, we can be reassured. So this can be kept as a second-line drug during a pandemic. And another important aspect of Graves thyroid disease is subacute thyroiditis. And it is seen that viruses can precipitate subacute thyroiditis. The viruses which usually precipitate subacute thyroiditis includes mumps, Coxsackie virus, as well as adenovirus. And subacute thyroiditis may mimic COVID-19 infection with fever, sore throat, as well as myalgia. But usually there will be tender goiter. TFT shows toxicosis and ESR will be very high. And the drugs used include NSAIDs as well as steroids. And you should be very careful while giving steroids because of the chance of immunosuppression. And 3 days back, a few days back, a report has come in JCEM, the first report of post-COVID subacute thyroiditis. In this, a patient was treated for COVID, a mild infection of COVID around 2 weeks back. 2 weeks later, the patient presented tender neck swelling, fever, and was found to have a tender goiter. TFT was showing thyrotoxicosis. The patient was treated for a few days with the prednisolone, and the patient improved. So this is the first post-COVID subacute thyroiditis, and we should be very watchful, especially post-COVID patients post-treatment. They may come up with these kind of symptoms like a fever, sore throat, as well as tender goiter, and this is one of the possibilities. Going to thyroid nodules, it is likely that thyroid nodules may be detected while being evaluated for imaging in COVID-19. So patients may be ventilated in ICU, so they may be getting evaluated by CT chest, and you may be instantly finding a thyroid nodule. And it is very common in the community. I have already said the means that up to 68% of the people may be having thyroid nodules. And out of this, 7 to 15% of the thyroid nodules may be malignant. And usually the thyroid malignancy in thyroid nodules is the usual malignancy is differentiated thyroid carcinoma, which includes papillary as well as follicular carcinoma. As per the ATA guidelines, the first test to be done in patients with thyroid nodules is a thyroid function test as well as ultrasonogram. And the ultrasonogram may be showing suspicious features. And when suspicious features are present, we should proceed with fine needle aspiration cytology. And if it is suspicious of medullary thyroid carcinoma, it's better to calcitonin. If it is unequivocally high, if the values are more than 100, directly proceed to surgery rather than going for FNAC. If it is borderline, better to go for FNAC and then decide based on the FNAC findings. And there is enough data which was published in ATA guidelines. There are 2 studies from Japan which says that papillary microcarcinoma, in which there are no high-risk features like closeness to trachea or closeness to recurrent laryngeal nerve or evidence of any lymph node spread. You may even postpone surgery Patients may even be kept on active surveillance. Based on 2 Japanese studies, they have kept the patients on follow-up for 3 to 5 years. Differentiated thyroid carcinoma, definitely the treatment of choice is surgery, there is no doubt. But usually these diseases are run an internal course, and delaying surgery by 6 months, even up to 6 months, may not be harmful as per some of the studies, which was published in European Journal of Endocrinology in 2017. So differentiated thyroid carcinoma surgery, it's a very critical decision that you have to make. If it is not that kind of an aggressive malignancy, surgery may be even deferred, especially in patients who are at high risk for acquiring COVID-19 complications like elderly, patients with uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, hypertension, and those with comorbidities. Anticipated repair, prolonged ventilation for ICU stay. And it should always be a shared decision. Patients should be very well informed about the probable complication of delaying the surgery also. And it's very clear that the COVID-19 screening should be undertaken for patients who is going for surgery. Pre-operative screening for COVID-19 is to be practiced as per the American Surgeons Association joint statement. And another aspect of thyroid disease is regarding radioactive iodine therapy. There are logistic issues for the travel for the patients as well as for acquiring the radioactive iodine material. So patients who are having thyroid malignancies, the radioactive iodine therapy may be delayed without significant increase in risk, as per the reference by Schiefel et al. In Thyroid 2016. Radioactive iodine therapy can lead to increase in interleukin-6 levels, especially for Graves' disease. And we know that there is a cytokine storm that is happening in patients with the severe COVID infection. And this is supposed to be one of the reasons for the complication that is happening in COVID infection. So whether previous radioactive iodine therapy in a few days can lead to increase in interleukin-6 levels, and whether it can potentiate the cytokine storm is something which we don't know, which has to be explored. The multi-targeted kinase inhibitors, which is used in the progressive metastatic differentiated thyroid carcinoma like sunitinib, vandetanib, or pazopanib, and this kind of multiple NIMs can lead to problems like hypertension, nephrotoxicity, myelosuppression, arterial thromboembolism, and cardiotoxicity, including prolonged QT interval and the risk of arrhythmia, especially because the patients with COVID-19 may be sick and already they are having problem with their renal functions and they are prone for thromboembolism. And we should be very much careful by administering these kind of drugs in patients with progressive metastatic thyroid malignancy, because they can also have these kind of complication. Especially, you should be very careful while administering these drugs during pandemic times. And what about pregnancy? It is said that it is very clear that it's known to all of us that there is an increased requirement of thyroxine during pregnancy. It's better that we increase the dose by 30% as soon as the pregnancy is confirmed. It is even better that if a patient comes to your OPD, a female who is in the reproductive age group, we should always give the instruction that when they become pregnant, they should increase the dose. The thing that we usually advise is to double the dose during the weekends, like Saturdays and Sundays, they can take double the dose of thyroxine. This advice can be given to the patients who conceive during the pandemic times. And the most important thing is, rather than testing, the testing facility may not be available. The most important thing may be to ensure compliance. We should tell the patient that they should be highly compliant with the treatment and test whenever the facility is available. Hyperthyroidism in pregnancy, as per the latest recommendation, ATI recommendations, up to 16 weeks, propyl thiouracil is the treatment of choice. But sometimes there may be problems of acquiring propyl thiouracil, so probably you can substitute with carbimazole. There is one study which says that carbimazole, the teratogenicity of carbimazole is comparable to that of propyl thiouracil. Thyroid nodules, especially differentiated thyroid carcinomas, usually they run an internal course. We can safely postpone surgery to postpartum period, but very aggressive neoplasm, it's better that we do the surgery in the second trimester, taking all the COVID precautions. And another important aspect is the telehealth in thyroid diseases, which is coming up. I think all of you are aware about the rapid emergence of telemedicine or telehealth. There has been rapid adoption of telehealth in chronic diseases, and this is especially hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism being chronic diseases. These diseases are amenable to telehealth. They are highly suitable in hypothyroidism, the chronic nature of the disease, infrequent follow-up visits for stable people, and reliance on biochemical tests for decision making makes them suitable for telehealth. And also DTC, differential thyroid carcinoma, chronic follow-up, especially when they follow with thyroglobulin as well as anti-thyroglobulin antibody levels, or hyperthyroidism follow with TFT. This is very much suitable. And the barriers for telehealth in thyroid disease include the patient's perception, especially even the physician's perception. We also want to see the patient in person. The payment as well as reimbursement pattern, whether insurance companies will reimburse for teleconsultation, and how to make the payments to the doctor. And sometimes the patients may expect that telehealth should be free of cost also. Infrastructure availability is another problem, especially for teleconsultation. We have to have good softwares, and there can be it can also another barrier is the regulations applicable on local basis. The governmental regulations, there can be legal because there can be legal issues later. So to conclude, my dear friends, most of the thyroid disorders run an indolent course, and urgent hospital visits can be avoided if technically not feasible. Some of them, like Graves' ophthalmopathy with impending visual loss, thyroid storm, aggressive malignancies, should be managed immediately. Telehealth is definitely an option due to the chronic nature of the thyroid disorders. I'm extremely grateful to Dr. Matthew John, who has provided me so many reference articles for this presentation. I'm also grateful to Dr. Ganesh from Mangalore for some of the articles. And I would like to tell that a happy marriage is a long-term conversation which always seems too short. Thank you so much.